As you can see from the slide, where the missing parts are not relevant for the description of the characters, in the first chapter, Wilde introduces the three main characters: Lord Henry Wotton, marked in red, Dorian Gray, marked in blue, and the painter Basil Hallward, marked in green. The first character to be introduced is Lord Henry Wotton. He is described by the narrator as lying on a divan of Persian saddlebags, that is, relaxing. He was smoking innumerable cigarettes. This information tells us that he indulged in pleasure and even vice, a concept that is reinforced by the fact that he was smoking an opium tainted cigarette. Smoking opium was very common among Victorian gentlemen. Lord Wotton's description proceeds through his dialogue with Basil. He appears judgmental, critico, incline ad esprimere giudizi. He freely expresses his opinion about Basil's work, for example, saying that it is the best thing I have ever done. The two art galleries, comparing the Grosvenor and the Academy. Lord Wotton also enjoys appearing. Consider his position on the divan, the fact that he was lying, the fact that he was smoking, his skill in making fanciful wreaths of smoke. He is elevating his eyebrows to show surprise. These all indicate that he is posing. Lord Henry Wotton also wants to sound profound through his criticism and his way of speaking through aphorisms and epigrams. So, through this passage, we get the general impression of an extremely self confident and refined gentleman. After all, Lord Wotton is an aristocrat. We can also define him as a decadent character. Here is the definition of decadent given by Oxford Dictionary: having or showing low moral standards and an interest only in pleasure and enjoyment. In this slide, I have highlighted the passages that can be considered as epigrams or aphorisms, and here is a definition of an epigram, also from Oxford Dictionary. An epigram is a short phrase that expresses an idea in a clever or amusing way, while an aphorism is a short phrase that says something true or wise. The second character to be introduced, though indirectly, is Dorian Gray. We don't know his name yet, but we understand he must be the protagonist because of the way his figure is described. His portrait is full length, a figura intera, on an upright easel, thus reinforcing the concept of verticality as if it were dominating the scene, and also it is positioned in the center of the room, a reference to the center of the story. Dorian is described as young, of extraordinary beauty, gracious, and comely. In the first chapter, Lord Wotton will succeed in learning the young man's name and how Basil had met him. Basil is reluctant to share this information with Lord Wotton because he is jealous of Dorian and afraid of Lord Wotton's influence on such a naive young man. Dorian will appear, but in the second chapter. The third main character is Basil Hallward, the painter. As you can see, I have not deleted the passages not pertaining directly to Basil, as I have with Lord Wotton and Dorian, because Basil's description emerges in reference or in reply to the other two characters. In fact, Basil is introduced in relation to his work and to Dorian. The first information is his position in the room, some little distance away from the portrait, that is to say, close, and the fact that they, both Dorian and the portrait, had on him, stimulating some secret dream. Basil is looking at his piece of work and he is smiling with pleasure. Then he places his fingers upon his lids as to imprison within his brain some curious dream from which he feared he might wake. Basil is described as being strange. In fact, he had disappeared some time before, and people had made all sorts of hypotheses regarding his disappearance. His oddity, la sua stranezza, is reinforced in this passage here, where he is described as tossing his head in an odd yet peculiar way, in una sua maniera strana e particolare. The adjective odd is also repeated here by Lord Henry Wotton when he says, "What odd chaps you painters are! Che strani che siete voi pittori!" He is also a skillful painter, it says it here. He has received an excellent education, and in fact, he has attended Oxford University. He is amiable because he had friends at Oxford University who used to laugh at his peculiarities, alle sue stranezze, ma senza cattiveria. He is also reserved because he wants to keep his inner feelings and thoughts to himself. For example, here where he closes his eyes to imprison a secret dream. He refuses to display Dorian's portrait, although he knows that it is his masterpiece and it would gain him immediate fame. Because, as he says, I really can't exhibit it. He says it here. I really can't exhibit it. I have put too much of myself into it. Is he referring to his artistic soul or to his ambivalent and ambiguous feelings for Dorian, his muse and maybe the object of his homosexual love?